I've just gotten hold of the Valerion Visionmaster Pro 2 to test, a projector which Valerion claims can offer cinema-grade, Hollywood quality, insane levels of contrast, and has pro-grade optics that supposedly can project images up to 300 inches in size, whilst retaining a high level of quality. That would make this the largest projected screen capability of any projector I've ever tried, and naturally, I had to try and at least test that claim, or at least as best as I could do. But before I show you that, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Valerion aren't a brand that I'm hugely familiar with, although they were making waves at IFA this year, winning several awards for their new Visionmaster series of projectors, of which the Visionmaster Pro 2 is a part of. And from a design perspective, they all followed the same design aesthetic, which, let's be honest here, is quite simple. It's particularly Spartan, almost brutalist. It's square and boxy, but for some reason it seems to simultaneously catch the eye and melt into the background as if it's not even here. I'm not really sure how they quite managed that, other than my usual guess of using witchcraft. I think that maybe the glassed front has a subtle greeny grey tone matched in with the accented chrome on the ridges come together to make it a much more sophisticated setup rather than that brutalist shape would suggest. It very nearly gives it some Art Deco vibes. This particular colour scheme, I believe, is given to the Pro 2 version, and the other versions, such as the higher end Max or the lower end Plus models, are different colours to help differentiate them all. But I must say, the design has grown on me, and that largely is from a few little hidden delights that it has. One of those being the large fold-away kickstand on the underside, which is covered in a non-slip rubberized coating. This allows it to be angled and positioned whilst resting on a flat surface, giving it a certain amount of portability for its use. And if you want to take it with you places, you don't necessarily need to pack any additional stand for it, making this projector suitable for portability as well as use in home. And another thing which confirms this use case is the EPP travel case that it gets shipped in for protection, which can be reused anyway after shipping, and will double up as a portable carry case when taken outside the home environment, which is very, very similar to the N1S we featured recently, and something I wish all manufacturers would do, so big thumbs up for this. Another portability related design choice is perhaps the one that you might not immediately realise, and that's that there's no separate inline power brick. It's all in the plug, a bit like Apple chargers, and for me, it makes the portability element much easier. And the fact that I absolutely hate inline power bricks with a burning passion. But another little design delight, and one that's also good for transport and portability, is that all of the connectivity is hidden on the back behind a little magnetic hinged panel. Now, flicking this down reveals a huge array of connectivity, a lot more than average. It's got a DC input, optical audio, which is rare to see on a projector these days, a USB 3 port, USB 2 port, and 3 HDMI ports, one of which is eARC compatible for sound bars and sound systems. It also has a 3.5mm audio jack, and although you don't need it because it has built-in Wi-Fi, it even has an Ethernet port for wired internet usage. I think it's fantastic to see this varied amount of connections on a projector of this size. In fact, any size. I'd say it's an exemplary number of connections, and that is a rare sight in today's options. But moving back to the last design delight, which surprisingly is not in the projector, it's actually the remote. And I think this is something here we all might be able to agree on. From a design perspective, it's nice. It feels solid in the hand, and the translucent effect on some of the buttons that also have a backlight is a really nice touch too. It's got a few really useful hotkeys too, such as Google Assistant, focusing, settings, input changing, to name a few. But one thing that I really want to give Valerion a gold star sticker for is the streaming app hotlink buttons. Not because this is a new thing, but because this is the first time where all 4 of the buttons are ones that I find useful. There's Netflix, Prime Video, YouTube, and Disney+. Normally, at least one of the buttons is reserved to some streaming service that has a total of 6 people who view it worldwide, something like Prime Music, Paramount Plus, or something even more ridiculously obscure like Channel 5 Online. I appreciate that is going to be subjective, and I'm sure there's people out there that don't have all 4 of the ones included on this remote, but for me that is the first time that something has been this spot on. I'm curious though, do you have these 4 streaming apps too, or not? And if not, what would be your ideal 4 streaming apps? Let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong about those 4 being the kings of streaming apps. But let's move on from the design, because it's very, very clear that once you've gone over the specs, the Valerion have very much put a lot of focus on the technical side of it and absolutely packed this to the brim with all of the latest advancements in projection technology. From a source perspective, it's a 4K triple laser projector, which is excellent. Anyone who follows along with STU'S reviews will know that triple laser projectors tend to be a good step above the rest when it comes to brightness, colour, contrast and price. But we'll get back to that. But this goes a lot further than just being a run-of-the-mill triple laser projector, because Valerion are calling this a Hollywood standard projector, and, well, I think they've potentially got every right to do so. The quality is superb and ultra sharp, and the maximum brightness is crazy at 3000 ISO lumens, and it comes together in a particularly impressive image with some incredible contrast and vibrancy. It's capable of displaying up to 120 Hz at 4K and up to 240 Hz at 1080p, which makes it great for gaming as well as actual films, especially considering it goes even above what current generation consoles are capable of outputting. And the best bit, like I mentioned at the beginning, is that these specs allow the Visionmaster to project an image up to 300 inches without a loss of quality. So let's go and have a look at that. Okay, it might not be 300 inches, but that's going to be impossible for me to find a screen that's 300 inches aside from actually going to a cinema. And believe me, I tried, but no one wanted a YouTuber rooting around their equipment. But still, this is as big as I could make it from home, and this, I believe, is around 150 inches, which is massive. And I must say, the quality is absolutely excellent still, even at 150 inches. What surprised me the most is the distance that this thing is away from this and able to project such a large image. It must be less than 2 meters away, and it can do 150 inches. That is pretty good for a long throw projector. But I've got to say the quality is outstanding, except I can't see it because I'm stood in the way. The Visionmaster Pro 2 really does offer a stunning picture. Even at this size, you can see how good that image looks and how much detail is in it, although bear in mind what you're watching is from a camera filming the projected image, compressed through editing software, compressed through YouTube, and you're now probably streaming this episode on 3G in the middle of absolute nowhere. That, and the fact that triple laser projectors are notoriously difficult to film on camera. But you thought that was just an image, didn't you? Whilst we're here, it might be worth noting that Valerion have made sure that you can maximise its potential, even at large sizes, because the Visionmaster Pro 2 supports IMAX Enhanced, along with a bunch of other standards and profiles such as Dolby Vision, Active 3D and HDR10+. So all in all, an extremely impressive device, but I wanted to expand a little more on my point about the distance being quite short from the screen to project an image so large, because that could potentially be bad. On one hand, it means that you'll be able to project a lot bigger even in smaller environments. But then on the other hand, if you have no choice but to have your projector at a particular set distance, you don't want to end up projecting a 300-inch image onto a 70-inch space. Well, the Visionmaster has a really impressive trick that I've never seen before on a typical lifestyle consumer projector. Normally, projectors have digital zoom function, where the projection size essentially adapts to the available space, but as much as this is useful, digital adjustment has always been a bit of an irritant because it still bleeds the illumination into an area that the projection covers. All it does is just reduce the actual image size into the area that's needed by digitally making it smaller. Now, a lot of systems, such as the automatic adaptation and obstacle avoidance features, use digital image manipulation for it. But by doing it digitally, it doesn't actually cut the luminance down to the area that it isn't projecting the image to. So you still see where that image would have been before the adaptation. For me, it really breaks the immersion a bit, but it also means that you lose picture quality too. The Visionmaster Pro 2, however, does something vastly different because this is the first projector that I've ever tested to have a motorized optical zoom. What this means is that you can increase or decrease the image size, and it also increases or decreases the projection boundary so that you're not simply digitally shrinking the image, you're physically changing the optical throw of the projection. This stops any bleeding because the boundary of the projection perfectly matches the boundary of the video source, but it also means that throughout its extent of the entire zoom, it will be in full 4K resolution. This is an incredible piece of technology and, in my opinion, creates a much more immersive experience that's adaptable to all projection sizes. And this is one of the reasons it can project larger images with a shorter throw distance. And it's incredible. And because it essentially allows you to focus the image into a smaller space, you're also able to situate the projector further from the surface that you're actually projecting onto, which could be really handy for large projection instances. For the 300-inch screen projection, Valerian say you can position it nearly 10 meters away from the screen, which is a long way indeed, and more than enough for a replication of a cinema-like setting in the home environment. Or in your garden, because no one I know has a 10-meter long living room in the UK, or even a 300-inch wall space for that matter. We all live in tiny cottages. Now, one point that should be said here is that being an optical zoom, there's obviously an upper and lower limit to the adjustment. Otherwise, it would just look something like the Hubble telescope. But when it gets to the lower zoom level, it will then allow you to shrink it even further with a digital zoom if you wanted to use it. But this has obviously the downside of the previously mentioned extra projection light that bleeds out the screen that other projectors have. So there's a bit of a downside. But the fact it has digital zoom, it also means that it's got the essential automatic adaptation and obstacle avoidance like other projectors do as well. Although with that said, the range of the optical zoom is so great, it's very unlikely that you'll ever need to use the digital zoom on it unless you're using it to avoid obstacles. Now, I'm not saying that this technology is new per se. Having tested many consumer and prosumer projectors in the more affordable price brackets, this is the first time I've ever seen this technology on a projector in this price bracket, and that deserves a big pat on the back for Valerion. Now, from a software and image processing perspective, the projector runs Google TV, so naturally you'll have access to all of the apps and services that you're used to. And there's not really much more to say on that front. If you've used Google TV, you'll know exactly what experience you're getting. But an interesting addition, and one that was inevitably going to rear its ugly head at some point, is the introduction of the hot topic buzzword bingo subject we're all sick to the teeth of hearing about, AI. Although thankfully it's not all LLMs with AI in the Valerion Visionmaster series. In a nutshell, it runs its own AI that helps to upscale HD content into 4K clarity, along with applying dynamic contrast to scenes, so that it's essentially constantly analysing the picture and adapting it in real time to get the most out of the image. As part of this image adaptation, it has something called dynamic tone mapping, or DTM for HDR content, which brings out so much more detail, and also something called enhanced black level, or EBL, which creates an insane level of contrast in images when turned on. If you focus on specifically something like the detail in the clouds or in the shadow areas of this image, you can see the difference that turning these features on makes. And it's all computed on their AI SoC MT9618, which probably doesn't mean a lot to most people, but what it translates to is a fantastic image with scenes where there are a lot of highlights or shadows, generally having a lot more accuracy and detail than I'd expect from a projector in this price bracket and technology. Now, I'd assume that given the level of quality and some of the incredible features like the optical zoom, that it would be absolutely ridiculous in terms of price, but I was pleasantly surprised because this comes out at $2,099. Now, yes, that still is quite pricey, but I think comparatively it's actually really reasonable. And when you add it into the mix of some of the innovations and capability, it makes it much more reasonable. Now, there is a slight asterisk here on the price because I've been very lucky enough to test this as a prototype prior to its launch. And according to the books, it's already in the top 3 most funded Kickstarter campaigns in history. And if that isn't an accolade that shows you just how good this thing is, I'm not sure what will be. At the time this review goes live, the Kickstarter will have ended and it should be available directly on their website, which I'll link below. Now, to try and bring this episode to some conclusion, it's clear that Valerion have really pushed the boat out with their hardware with this one. They've packed as much technology into a smaller unit as possible, and it really shows how much they're focused on this product. Perhaps if I was to pick on anything, it would be the design. Not that it's bad, but because it's very projector-like. There's nothing really new on the externals that even remotely hints to the incredible capability. But then maybe that's its biggest strength too. It's unashamedly what it is. I mean, look, I'm probably being a little bit unfair here because it does look extremely premium and feels incredibly well built. And the style is super subjective at the end of the day. But other than this very small comment, Valerion have really showed me what's truly capable with at-home projectors, and it feels like the Visionmaster Pro 2 has just raised the bar of my expectations by quite a bit. So the question is, have they delivered on the promise of a Hollywood experience at home? Unquestionably. And I'm just thinking now, if the Pro 2 has been this good, God knows how good the Visionmaster Max is. I might have to try that one next. That's even got lens shift, so not only can you change the size optically, you can also change the height alignment optically too. But what do you guys think of the Visionmaster Pro 2 from Valerion? Let me know in the comments, and remember to tell us what streaming services that you're currently using. I'm genuinely interested to know if the 4 included on this remote are the ones that people use the most. Of course, it's still missing a STU'S reviews hot link, but we'll get there eventually. And if today's episode helped you decide if the Valerion Visionmaster Pro 2 is for you or not, then make sure you return the favour and hit that subscribe button. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for joining, and I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.